Hi, this is Sherri Gallagher with Technacon Company Incorporated, and I wanted to go over some ideas as to how to transition from ISO 9001-2008 to the 2015 revision. Let's start with a little bit of history. ISO 9001 has been around since 1988. It was based on a U.S. military standard from World War II. And the original was a British standard, BS 5750, which was taken verbatim. It was revised again in 96, 2000, 2008, and it was due for 2015. Each time it's been tried to make it more usable for the service industry. Over time, additional standards were created with different numbering systems and a different requirement for manual. In order to organize this, ISO developed Annex SL. It's a standard format for all standards, sort of like having a procedure for how to write procedures. All new standards must follow Annex SL, and all revised procedures must be converted to it. If you would like to see a relationship between the 2015 and the 2008 version, go to the link on this page. All right, let's get into a little bit of what are the differences just as a quick overview. Scope stays the same in both. On Section 4 in 2015, it's context of the organization, which was quality management systems. Section 5 becomes leadership, which is important, and was related to Section 5 management responsibility. Section 6 is planning, which was 5.4.2 quality management system planning. Section 7 was support, which was resource management. Section 8 is operation, which related to 7 product realization. Section 9 is performance evaluation, which relates to Section 8 measurement analysis and improvement. And Section 10 is improvement, which related to 8.5 improvement. All right, let's look at the documentation changes with ISO 9001-2015. There is no requirement for a quality manual, procedure, or management representative. This makes it much easier for service industry who does not generally have a need for a quality manual. However, there's no requirement to remove those documents. You still have a requirement to communicate, and procedures are an easy, simple method to communicate. If they are effective in your company, then please continue to use them. What has been added is a reference to documented information, and I counted 30 requirements for documented information. Now, what is documented information? Well, it was your records, and it was all of your procedures and manuals and work instructions. But now it also includes minutes, tables, spreadsheets, databases, hyperlinks, if you ever have to go out to the internet to get information direct, external documents like your ISO standard, and of course, videos and manuals. It's any information that you need to pass on to your employees so that they can be effective in performing their job. Or if you need to prove that you have performed according to the ISO 9001 standard. All right, let's go on and talk about the context of the organization. Your scope should stay the same, and you should be very clear that you are following the ISO 9001 standard. What is added in context of the organization references back to that scope, and you have to define what are the external influences on your company. Now, that could be things like the value of the dollar fluctuating, and if it goes in one direction, then it's a risk for losing business. If it goes in another direction, it's an opportunity for increasing business. You have to do something similar with internal influences, and then you have to define the interested parties and what risks and opportunities they present. Now, customers have always been an interested party, and that was the one we focused on. We've also touched on suppliers in the 2008 revision. However, now we want to also look at employees, we want to look at unions, we want to look at the community, we want to look at any people who are affected by what your organization does. And we need to define what are the risks and what are the benefits. Now, I'll do another video on each of these in a little bit. All right, let's start looking at what else is expected in the 2015 revision. Everything must be done on a process approach, whether service industry or manufacturer. Everything is a process. If you're going to clean someone's furnace, you're going to follow similar steps, no matter what you do. Everything is a process. You need to define your process. One of the ways to do that is a turtle diagram. Now, there is no requirement to use turtle diagrams. In the 2015 standard, use your own approach. It's one tool. Now, each process can be broken into sub-processes, and the output from a process is the input to the next process. So it becomes a chain which defines the entire process. Look at the interrelationships and the handoffs between each of these sub-processes, because I'll give you a clue. That's where you're going to have your biggest risk and your biggest opportunity. Handoffs between departments are generally where the ball gets dropped, where mistakes are made. So you always want to look at that very, very closely. You want to look at the risks and the opportunities in each sub-process and define them. And then you contribute all of that to the process as a whole. So it's very, very important that you use a process approach, use whatever tools you would like, that you define the risks and the opportunities, and you look at the interrelationship and the handoffs between them. Now, as I've been going on, I've been talking about risk. Risk, risk, risk. One of the biggest things that has been added in the 2015 revision is risk-based thinking. Now, this is not the formal risk management. There's another whole ISO standard for that. This is something that's been done intuitively in the 2008 version and every version that you have implemented. What is being required is that it be more formalized and it become part of the strategic and operational planning. So you're going to want to have risks and opportunities tied out throughout the standard. Because you are doing this as risk-based thinking throughout the standard and formalizing it, there's no longer a need for preventive action. You've always been doing that. If you did failure mode and effect analysis, FMEAs, then you were doing risk-based thinking. So preventive action is no longer a single section of the standard, but it's expected to be built into every single element of the QMS. Now, this is very, very important, and you need to be able to define this to anyone who comes in to audit. Remember back when I talked about the change of leadership and it being different from management responsibility? In the 2015 revision, auditors are directed to evaluate the leadership. And not just did they hold a management review and give out assignments, but are they integrated, involved, committed, and aware of all that's going on in the organization, and are they accountable? Top management must demonstrate how they lead. It's no longer acceptable to hold a management review, pass out assignments of quality objectives, and say, okay, everybody, here's what you do, see you in a year. Management must be on top of how people are doing at accomplishing their objectives, and if they are falling behind or not meeting them, management must review if they have provided adequate resources and what they are going to do to make it possible for that employee to now be successful at accomplishing it. Top management can't claim, oh, we hadn't had another management review, so I didn't know. Top management is accountable. They must demonstrate how they lead. And it makes it much harder on the auditors, but they must look at and find where leadership is involved in every single step of the operation. This is very, very important. All right, so let's go on to the last of this. What's the other big change? Well, internal audits have changed because you must be done as a process. They must still be done at planned intervals, and you still have to take into account the importance of the process, any changes that have occurred since the last audit or that are going on, and the results of previous audits. So this is where you go back to looking at the bits and pieces in the sub-processes where you were doing an analysis. You can use each of those as your title for when you're going to plan your intervals. So if you have one on accepting an order, you can decide the importance of that and how frequently you need to audit that throughout a year. If you have changes, you put in a new ERP system, you're going to increase the areas that are impacted by those changes. Audits should follow a process and should not be done using a single section of the standard, but incorporate all of it and all of the documentation. It is going to change your checklists. And to start out with, it's going to be very difficult. And that's where your documents will come in to help. If you have done diagrams such as turtles or some sort of process analysis, that is going to help you to define what it is you are going to audit and where are the edges of the audit. So don't be worried. You've got the 2008 revision in place, and you're in good shape to move on to the 2015 revision. I'm going to be putting up some additional videos with more detail, and you can reach me at my email, technacon1986@sbcglobal.net, or my phone number below.